chat and learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella, and I'm super excited to dive into this next hour with you. I had the pleasure of hosting our guest speaker once before, so I'm super excited to have her back. And I don't want to waste too much time because you all are going to see that the hour is going to go by like this. I see that you all are joining. And if you are just joining us, please go ahead and write in the chat box where you're calling from so we can see where we are in the world. Our guest speaker is in San Jose, California. I'm in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Go ahead and drop in the chat box where you're calling from. I see we've got some folks from Texas. Awesome, Buenos Aires. Go ahead and let us know where you're calling from so that when we dive into your questions, we can really just see, how many of us across the globe essentially are really curious about this topic that we're going to dive into today. I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping rules and then I'll shout everyone out in a minute. There are crazy things going on in the world. We could spend a whole day talking about that. With that said, thank you for joining us for the hour. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule and learning, how to develop your skills and hopefully make the world a better place. With that said, when you joined, your mute was on just so that we can avoid any background noise. But I want you to feel free to share your voice at any point. Turn your cameras on. You can take yourselves off of mute. You can chime in. Thank you, Jane. I see you for turning your cameras on. Awesome. With that said, if anyone has any sensitive material that they want to be kept anonymous, feel free to find me in the chat box. You can find me under Mariella. And then the last thing that I'll say is if you do speak up, great. You will also be featured on our live recording. And so this is being recorded live. You can watch this playback on the PowerToFly website, also on YouTube and on our socials. So make sure that you follow us. And then with that said, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker because you all are going to just love Malika. I fell in love with her last time. She's so wise. She's got so many beautiful gems to drop for us today, especially this topic is super chewy. So I'm going to pass the mic to you, Malika. Let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to know about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
Thank you, Mariella. You are just amazing. The entire team at PowerToFly, you know how much I love you guys. This is just great for me to be coming back for the second session. I have been, using PowerToFly myself for the last 2 years, especially after I moved into leading the team that I was working with as an IC. And suddenly one day I was supposed to manage people and I needed a lot of guidance and support from the community, and PowerToFly was my go-to. Like all these chat and learn sessions, the panel sessions, the videos, the material on PowerToFly is so relevant. I've used it myself, and that's when I decided, okay, when I have something authentic to share, I would like to come and talk about it. So this topic is very it's very intriguing for me. It's something that I spend a lot of my time thinking critically about these days. And it was not like I came into my management journey knowing how to delegate well. In fact, I sucked at it. I can tell you those stories if you get the time for that. But I learned it, and it was an acquired skill. And that was because I was getting mentored, and I had great coaches inside and outside my company. And the moment I started practicing those skills, I was like, this is just changing the game. It's changing the perspective at which I look at my team. And it's a true superpower, right? It's something that can take you to that next level. And that's why I am so happy to be sharing that with you. Of course, I work for big and small companies, and the styles are very different. At least my current stop is, a startup, and being a small company, the styles are so dynamic. There's so much chaos going on all the time. So it's a different style. I'll be joining Twitter this month end. And that's a big company, and I'm sure I'll have to change some of my styles when I go there. But the core principles of delegation, I think that's what I want to share with you today. And I'm super excited to do that.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited that you are willing and able to get real with us, be vulnerable with us, share. I know you said later on you'll share some more of your personal journey as far as how you've been able to navigate these waters. And also congratulations on, all of the beautiful things that you are doing so far and that are coming soon. So with that said, I'm just gonna jump into this round of questions here that we've submitted offline. We're gonna take them one by one. If you've joined us before for a chat and learn, you'll be familiar with that. So we're just gonna present it on the screen. If this is your question, for example, we'll start with this one. If this is your question that you submitted, feel free to come off of mute or add to the chat box if you want Malika to dive in deeper. If this is not your question and you would like to, add your 2 cents or maybe ask Malika to dive deeper, share something about your personal journey, again, feel free to come off of mute. I'm going to sound like a broken record by the end of the chat because I want you all to, take this moment and make it as useful as you can. So let's start with this first question, Malika. What's the difference between delegating and demanding? How much of successful delegation relies on tone, word choice, or the medium of the message?
Yes, great question, right? It's a very obvious thought process as well, because when I'll start with a story. When I approached management for the first time, in fact, I didn't understand anything about delegation, and there is so much on the internet about it. I initially thought it's just something that you can do, but you want someone else to do, and you need to figure out who is right for the right task and hand it over to them, right? And it's very easy to confuse it with asking people to do something from a place of authority, because that's what it comes across, right? You have a team, and you could do it, but now you have a team who could do it for you, so why not just give it to them? So there is, if you really think about it, there's an underlying sense of authority, and that's where the demand comes from. It's like saying, these are the deadlines we have, these are the goals we have, can we have you do it? But that is such a wrong way to approach it. The fact of the matter is that delegation is not a goal in itself. It's just a tool so that you can bring your leadership as a service. At the end of the day, and this is another talk that I gave, right? I'm a huge proponent of servant leadership. In fact, in a creative business like the tech field, there is no other way. If you don't practice servant leadership, what else will really drive high performance in the long term, right? So it's always about bringing leadership as a service and approaching delegation as something that can enable your team and empower your team to really bring their best selves to work. So like simple things like tone, word choice, right? These 2 things, think about it from a very philosophical perspective. For me, for example, my core principle is that I never want to get angry, and I never want to come across as an egoist. Ego is out of my life. Personal life, sometimes it still comes in the way, but professional life, no, there's no place for it, right? Anger, same thing. I mean, sometimes at home, I can still have that privilege to kind of show a little bit of it. But as such, I don't want anger in my life, especially in my professional life. There's no place for it. So these being the core principles, if you make your tone elegant, always think about taking the high bridge, right? Like there are always better ways to say the same thing. Instead of just typing out that email, instead of immediately saying something, just take a 30-second breathing moment and just practice some calmness to it and choose better words. English is a beautiful language. There is a vocabulary. Just choose a better word, look for better synonyms, say the same thing with a little bit of more creativity, and like make it a practice to do everything slightly better, right? And there are so many things that one can do to actually make that more effective. So tone and word choice, in my opinion, there is no reason to not be the best version of yourself. Medium of message, this is a very interesting thing. You need to pick the right medium, especially now, because everything is remote and different companies, especially small companies, I've used email sometimes, I've used Slack a lot. Sometimes it's just about going by someone's desk, which we cannot do now. So you need to choose the right medium of message. Even that has to be towards the more elegant side. That's when a delegation can be effective. It's never demanding. There is no confusion about it, because demanding can work for this release, right? But then what about the long term? What about 6 months? What about 8 months? So always remember that it's about developing people through delegation, and then getting the work done. It's about getting those work done which is in line with the company's goals and mission and vision. And you always have to think about, your reputation is at stake. So what you say, the tone, the word choice, it's who you are and who do you want to be, through every email, through everything you say. So if you approach it like this as a service, and delegation is just one of the things that you need to do in your job, then there is no need to confuse it with demanding at all. Because it might feel like it works for the short term. It's definitely not going to work in the long term. People will not respect, there won't be trust, there won't be high performance. So I would say just approach leadership as a service and think long term.
All right, so remember, I see people writing away and nodding their heads. And remember, I told you all she's going to drop so many gems today. And I'm also taking notes just to make sure that I can go back on a couple of things that you're expressing that I think are so important. We've talked about this before, where one of my favorite topics to talk about, especially in the world of tech, is emotional intelligence, right? And empathy. And I love that you use that in the core.
Matthew, I'm over here.
Oh. Sorry about that. I think someone jumped off of mute. Hi. I love that you use that on your approach as far as, keeping this a holistic vision and not, for example, trying to be someone else that you have that adds actually constant work. I love that you're saying your life will actually be easier. You will be more respected. People will trust you if you can hold on to who you are. And then who do you want to be? I love that you're putting that question up. I can't quote you exactly because you were going super quickly, but you said something about there's no reason to play the wrong version of yourself or something like that, or to choose the wrong version of yourself. That is a beautiful way to also look at it, because I find that when we are working with, I've also had to change my language. You're not working for someone, you're working with someone. This is a partnership. So I love that you're questioning language as well, because to see this as a partnership, it's a ebb and flow, it's a give and take, and you're not sacrificing a part of yourself to then be able to lead a group of people. I love that you're saying use it as a tool and a service, which also commands that you practice it and that you're always learning and being curious, instead of, you've reached the end of the sentence, there's nowhere to go. And that just keeps things very either slow or toxic, even, because you're not growing. Okay, so who wants to jump in before we go to the next slide? I see, Jane, you've taken yourself off of mute. Did you want to ask a question?
I love all this. And I was like, oh, should I just try to not catch next time? Like, no, whatever else can wait. I'm so glad that I decided to put everything else on hold and just come. Malika, you are amazing. I like everything you said about what was it? Be the best version of yourself. So my son inspires me to wake up and be the best version of myself every day. So when you said that, I'm like, sister, I hear you. And then the other thing that you said about not being angry and, your ego has to stay out of it. So for me, like, I'm learning how to communicate. I'm learning how to be patient. I'm learning how to be flexible. And those things are so hard for me. But one of the things that I learned through therapy this year was acceptance. And with acceptance, it doesn't mean you have to like it or even agree. You just accept it so you can keep moving forward. So I'm just going to be a sponge and just soak it all up. So I am taking notes, but I'm listening.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for sharing that. This is exactly what we look forward to, right? It's really engaging if you guys participate. So thanks for sharing those thoughts. I 100% agree. It's If you're not accepting, then there are so many biases going around, right? And I used to do this when I started off as well, because I was coming from 10 years of core backend experience in the tech industry. So I was full of biases in my head, and I would approach delegation from that seat of bias, which would make it really difficult for me to be effective at my job. And then, of course, I learned certain things to get out of it. But the moment you practice being acceptable, you will understand that your biases are actually coming in the way of being productive, and you're not doing a good job at whatever it is, in this case, delegation. So that's definitely a huge point. Thanks for sharing that, Jane.
Yes, and we are at, I'm doing so much. I have Yuval Noah Harari like on my interview YouTube playlist, and I'm reading his books right now. And I love that one of the things that I'm just getting from all of the different books that I'm reading. I'm reading a nice kind of smorgasbord of different, kinds of, fiction, nonfiction, memoirs. And what I'm realizing is we are at a crossroads where actually we need a different kind of leadership. And I think that the easiest way to see, just as far as on a global level, it seems like the only way to get to some sort of colorful resolve is to continue to add these viewpoints on how do I approach leadership? How do I include more voices? How do I stay curious? And how do I, be my truest self? I love that you're ringing on all of these questions here. So let's move on to this next question. And again, if anyone wants to hop in, write in the chat box. I see that we're calling from all over. So thank you for writing on the chat box. I see California, Oklahoma, Argentina, Texas. Awesome. So I'm so happy that you all are here today. All right. So this next question we got.
Can I add one more thing?
Absolutely.
You were talking about bring your best self to work. So one of my favorite people is Mike Robbins. I don't know if you guys have read this book, but I absolutely adore him. So I recommend this book.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jane. Love it. Love it. I love that you got like a show and tell too. I'm waiting on the next thing for you to pull out. Okay. So is delegation easier when you're managing a larger team or a smaller group? Should your tactics or methods for delegation change based on the group size? And are some styles better suited to certain types of tasks or your specific industry?
Yes, this is a very thoughtful question. I can see someone who has gone through maybe a small company or a medium-sized company and seen a couple of transitions asking this question, because I went through some of these things myself. So I would say there is a backstory to it, right? And very briefly, it's this, that there is a sweet spot for number of people that can report directly to a manager. And once it starts getting bigger, then the team, the management has to do some kind of thinking, soul searching, and figure out, hey, do we need to have an organizational breakdown? Do we need to break down these teams? Do we need to merge teams? Is it too big? Is 5 people okay? Is 10 people okay reporting to a manager? How big should it be? All that is there, right? But most of the times so if someone's doing that, it's very good in the company. But what happens sometimes, and I think that's where this question is coming from too, is as managers, we don't have a control over that. Sometimes you just have like a big team given to you, or over time, the team might grow, right? And especially in a startup or a medium-sized company, it can happen that you are directly managing a group of, let's say, 10 people. And sometimes you also have other responsibilities, like you're hands-on, and you're also technically more involved. So I would say this. So first of all, if it is a team which is of 5 people or less, have a one-on-one relationship. It's mostly like what I do is I have a matrix where I have every team member, and I have the column which records their strengths. And this I would have recorded over the period of time from my discussions with them during one-on-ones, feedback sessions, coaching, all these meetings that I have with them. I record their strengths, I record their areas of improvement, and I have their name against it, right? And I take that every time I'm talking to them. It's a consistently evolving document. So if it is a team of 5 people, maintaining this information is really easy for me, because I exactly know when I need to delegate a task, I can say that, hey, you know what, here is this task. The management doesn't need this to be delivered immediately. There is some time, right, on this. There is a little bit of buffer, and here is this person who has the aptitude for it but doesn't have the current skill set. I'm willing to grow this person. So that's why delegating this task to this person is the right thing. Even though he doesn't have the current skill set, he has the potential to do it. Similarly, sometimes if I know that, oh my God, here is this person who's like really good at this particular skill and I want it like in 2 days, then it's a no-brainer. I'm going to assign it to the person who's an expert on it, because the velocity is very high, right? The velocity requirement is very high. So delegation is this for me, where I'm consistently matching the potential, which is the where there is a lack of current skill set, but there is a lot of potential, enthusiasm, energy, and willingness to learn. And based on that, I'm delegating that task. And sometimes it's the current skill set. If it's a small team, it's really easy to do this through your one-on-ones. But as the team starts getting bigger, it starts getting a little difficult. So that time, what I would say is, there are 2 parts to delegation, right? One is assigning the right task to the right people. And after that, how do you stay effective by monitoring it correctly? How do you make sure you're not coming in the way of your engineers? How do you stay out of it, but still get the right statuses? How do you know it's progressing correctly? So that's the second part to delegation. One without the other will fall apart. So, and that requires time. So if the team starts getting bigger, I would say, and it's worked for me, is you just select champions, so you have projects, right? Like, so today, if I'm dealing with a team of 11 people, and there are projects inside the team that are happening, I select champions. So for a project of like let's say 4 people, there is a GraphQL project happening where there are 4 people, there's a tech lead and 2 senior engineers and 1 software engineer. I just say that, hey, based on the skill and will level, you're the champion for this project. Why don't you give me all the statuses every day, as in the daily stand-ups? You tell me what is going on. I will get the data. If something doesn't match, then I'll talk to the engineers, but otherwise I'm just staying out of my engineers' way, because I've elected a champion. It's empowering them. It's also growing them, right? It's giving them responsibility. You're thinking about their career growth with every move you make as a manager, but the champion gets to decide, how, what information should be shared with the leader, what is required. And I ask the right questions to make my decisions. And it's easier for me to go to 1 person than 4 engineers. So like that, I have like 2-3 champions inside my team. So this is one great way to, it's called as the Rocky framework. It's very popular, and it's not my thing. It's just on Google. You can Google it, but it works really well, especially not only when the team gets big, but also during cross-functionals, because you don't have authority all the time when you're leading a cross-functional and you're dealing with a big team. So having champions really works well. Then are there different styles? Definitely. Like I've worked for big and small companies, and I know that even in a small company, my startup grew from being a 20 engineer company to a 60 engineer company, and we saw so many changes. The thing is, software industry is a very creative industry. We don't know that, but we are not like a financial sector or an assembly line or an automotive industry. It's not traditional at all, right? It's like writing code and having these complex, scalable, distributed systems. It's very more creative than not. So as a manager, it's more like how do you inspire, influence, and facilitate growth inside your team? So for that, whatever, you don't focus on the processes, right? Just focus on the goals. And this electing champions really works. And there is one hidden point in this question. If you feel like your team is getting too big, you might be ready for your next thing as well. Maybe you have a team this big because you're really capable as a leader, right? Otherwise your management wouldn't trust a big team with you. So you are in a very strategic position to maybe break the team into two parts and go one level up. You can maybe move into senior management, and that way you have two direct report managers managing to you. And it's a typical way for you to grow in your career. So you need to keep thinking about this. So instead of looking at a big team as a disadvantage, it can work for you and for your team's growth. So is it challenging? It is, because we are all successful when we are making the right decisions, and to make right decisions you need data. So managing a bigger team is definitely a little more challenging, but look at it as a potential for growing your career. That's what I would say.
Beautiful. Okay, so I've got a couple of follow-up questions, and if anyone on the line does as well, you can start to write them in the chat box, and you can also come off of mute and share it with your own voice. But I wanted to ask you, so this is interesting. I love that you select champions. So just because I have worked in schools often, and I see kind of like the natural competition that comes when like one person gets something, that the others don't, in this case, the title of a champion. How do you foster like a holistic competitive culture within your team so that, you essentially are helping everyone grow and not feel left behind?
Yes. Thanks for this question. This will highlight some of the things that I have spent time thinking about. So the thing about champions is it doesn't always. So first of all, there are two things, right, that I see. One is the skill level, and the other is the will level. This has helped me a lot because the thing is, when all these servant leadership, delegation, managing your social capital, all these things are like just words to make sure that you are building a high performance culture, right? And high performance with respect to productivity, and a culture where the team thinks about each other. So what happens is, in every thing that I do, I like to keep in mind the culture, because if the culture is like the fundamental building block, right? If you're not thinking about that, somewhere something starts smelling wrong, and it starts becoming so big and out of control. So I feel like, even if nothing else, if I'm thinking about getting the culture right with every decision I make, then that's not a bad day. So even in selecting champions, I feel like measuring that right mix of skill and will level is very important. So what do I mean, right? Skill is where, that person has a lot of strengths, and he's clearly like the expert in that area. It's a no-brainer for me to select that person for this, because the majority of the programming or whatever the technical work is requires that skill. Will level is how badly do you want to do this job? Does it mean something for your career growth? Have we talked about it in our coaching sessions and in our one-on-ones? Does this meet your aspirations, so that you can grow in your career, right? So, and willingness can come from new hires, fresh grads. Sometimes they are just enthusiastic and energetic. Then they're probably not yet ambitious, but they're very energetic. I want to do everything kind of an attitude. So that is willingness as well. So, and then I have to map it to the task. So sometimes if it's a cross-functional which needs to be delivered within a week, and there are 5 more teams on the table, like marketing, system test, operations, and of course engineering, and let's say support, right? So this is a big cross-functional. Then I'll have to decide how much buffer do I have to let go of the skill level, and how much buffer do I have to accommodate that willingness, and then make the right choice. Because the thing is, if you're just selecting people with the highest skill level, then you're fostering a culture where only the same person is growing all the time, right? And my idea is that I don't want followers in my team. I want everyone to think like a leader. In fact, the less they need me, the better, So they should be able to make those decisions, and that's my job, like to really make them think about the higher level stuff. And if they can act as leaders, then that's great for me. So I need my engineer who's just 2 years into the job to develop this champion skill set, right? They should be able to take rest, because what does it mean to be a champion? They need to show accountability, responsibility. They need to do a little bit of leadership as well, and maybe 5% of project management, right? So there are a lot of skills that that person is learning, and those are all important for a software engineer to then become a senior engineer and then become a staff engineer. So through selecting my champions, I'm also growing my people, because I'm not mothering a team, right? I'm not here to take care of them. I want them to grow. I want them to think about their career. I want them to be ambitious, because that's who I am, So if I'm still doing this job, that means that I'm on that pursuit where they need me less and less. I'm out of their way. So selecting champions is that task for me. That's why I'm saying delegating is important, so that you can free up your cycles to do these kind of things. I want to spend time thinking, who can be the next champion? Why is this person not having enough leadership skills? Can I make him a champion for this upcoming project? Let's see how he reacts to this. So I want to spend my cycles doing that, not writing code or knocking off Jira tasks, or, I can do that because I've done that for 10 years, but that's not where my highest value is. So ideally, everyone should get a chance to champion a project in a year, right? However small or big it is, I get to decide that, but everyone should have that experience. It should not be one person all the time. So yeah.
Oh, you're making my heart sing, and I see people are nodding their heads, which is
I love this.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. These questions are really great. They're thought-provoking.
Yes. Does anyone want to hop in here before we move on to the next question? We've got about 30 minutes left, so let's use this time to shine. Anyone want to chime in with Malika here?
I love everything you're saying. I actually, when I was in the wine industry for 8 years. When I hired my lead, I told her that you're going to replace me. So when I hired her, and it was funny how I found her. She was actually a server at a restaurant that I really enjoyed. And I saw that she had so much potential, and she was there like 5 years, and she just wanted to be promoted, and her manager was not having it. And so he actually got angry at me for taking her. And I said, well, if you took care of her, I wasn't taking her from you. And so she was my lead. And then shortly after that, because she was still going to school, so she was part-time. And then she got promoted to lead. And I'm like, if I don't go anywhere, you're not going anywhere. So I left so she could be the supervisor. And then she grew. And then she outgrew it too, because there was no room. I left because there was no room for me to grow. So same thing happened to her. I think 2 years after I left, there was no room for her to grow. So she left as well. And we're just like, she's like my sister. I love her so much. And just, it was her old manager's loss and my gain when I met her and knew that she is just positive energy, just exuding. And all she wanted was this title so she could put on her resume. And I'm like, no, honey, you are worth so much more than that. And that's just a shame that they didn't see that. But they were actually angry with me. They called me and said, how dare you steal my employee? I was like, well, I didn't steal her. And if you had taken care of her, she wouldn't have been enticed with my job offer.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, this speaks to 2 points, because leaders who are delegating really well, right? They share insight. They can look at a person and say that this is what you can be in the next 5 years. You should do this. And sometimes they don't see it, but the leader should see that. And the good leaders are doing that, and then fanning the flame, right? Like just facilitate growth. You will always see this. At least I have done the study of all the great leaders that I know. People are growing under them all the time. That's a good indication that they're good at delegation, they're good leaders, because not only are they growing, but they're also letting the people inside. Sometimes they leave the company and that's fine, but people are growing under you, right? And growth is such a hard thing to facilitate, especially in the valley, because there is just so much talent and like so many bad managers around. Growth is not so easy. So it's really a high value thing. If you see that happening, that's your indication that this leader has something good going on over here. So those two things that you said, Jane, just speak to those 2 points, right? You had that insight and you were fanning that flame of growth, which are hard things to do. So cheers to that.
Thank you. One of my other biggest complaints is I feel like not everyone is a people manager, and a lot of companies use that as a retention tool. So in the role that I was in, that I left, I was in learning and development in HR, and that just aggravated me because they would use that as a retention tool, but then not give those people managers the tool to be people managers. Mm-hmm. Not everyone's cut out to be a people manager. They could be project managers, but not people managers. And so that was one of like the biggest challenges for me. For example, someone I know was not a people manager, and it turned out very poorly for the team and everyone else around. And I had voiced my opinion about that person. You know, maybe this person just needs to be a project manager and not a people manager, and they didn't like that. But in my last role, I actually helped a lot of employees kind of cultivate their career path and what they wanted to do, and gave them the skill sets at maybe what they want to do. They didn't know they had the option. They just got this job and they're like, oh, this is what I'm doing and this is my path. And once I was like, no, actually, what do you really want to do? You know, tell me about your dreams, you know, what you want to do. And they're like, actually, I'm doing this, but I would love, you know, like they were in production. They're like, actually, I would really love to be in sales or marketing. And I'm like, let's get you there. What do you need? And so I loved that part of my job. I quit my boss. I didn't quit my job.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. I love this. I love that we're giving real life examples and just seeing the power of leadership using emotional intelligence, right? Like stepping out of your own way. And I love, Malika, that you started this conversation by acknowledging that there is a lot of ego in leadership and how that is something that goes against everyone in the end. And I love that we're seeing examples from that here. So thank you so much. I love that also, Jane, you brought this up, because as you're speaking about that, I see it also from the person who is in that position, right? Who they enter into a position, and you know, let's say, Jane, that you didn't leave. We often say on PowerToFly is like, leave the door open. Don't just get where you are and then be like, see ya. You know, not going to be enough women ever in this industry because doors are being closed and you're not making space at the table. And I love that you're saying, you could no longer grow, so you didn't hold on to it and until you couldn't anymore for the sake of what, I guess, essentially ego, and you left so that this person, so you could first find your continuation of your career, and then this person could step into that role. So I love that. Okay, I see some folks writing in the chat box as well. I'm going to move on to this next question here. We've got a little under 30 minutes left. So again, if you want to write things in the chat box, feel free to do so. You can also come off of mute, but let's hop into this next question. Is it possible to delegate too much?
No. There is nothing like too much delegation. This I'm strongly opinionated, and arguably maybe, but in my experience, I just feel like there is nothing like too much delegation. And even asking that question, right? If I think about it a little bit more, and I've done it, it's like, I've always felt, there was another question as well. So I've gone through that. I always felt guilty delegating too much and seeming as if, oh, I don't have things to do. That is itself a point of I wouldn't say concern, but an opportunity for us to think. See, the thing is, whether we like it or not, at least in the computer science industry, most of the managers have come from being ICs, right? We were all either senior or staff engineers, and we were all fairly decent at what we were doing. Like I was doing core systems, C programming, systems level networking, backend work for 10 years. And then, so I was a very, a passionate individual contributor. And when I was an IC, the highest value thing that I could bring to the table was writing kick-ass code, right? Like refactoring libraries, building the best CI/CD pipelines, worrying about performance to the last bit, picking the right data structures, writing graceful API designs, data modeling. So for me, from the world I came, I was like, hey, this is the highest value thing I can do. So, when I became a manager, all that was still reminiscing in my head, right? That's all I knew for all these years. So I was like, if I'm giving away all of this more and more to my team, if my team is doing everything, what am I doing? So what am I here for? Just to kind of facilitate and do the project management? So initially I went through that phase where, I would feel like, oh, I'm delegating too much. I don't have anything on my plate. Can I knock off some Jira bugs? Can I do a little bit of this library work? Hey, I wrote this code. Can I help you with this, right? I was playing. So that's where that question of delegating too much comes from. But then I realized, it took me a while, but I realized that if I wanted to become a successful manager and not get stuck in that mediocrity, which by the way is, it's rampant in management, right? It's so easy for you to remain a mediocre manager and get stuck in that first line management and never grow your career. The only way you can do that is figure out what is high value now. What are you supposed to do? And I realized that, the best use of my time is not in writing code or helping the team with the bottom line, right? It's about uh, influencing them, making them think about their career, being that amazing coach, seeing things for them before they see it. It's about developing them through the tasks that we have. It's always about mapping the vision, goals, and the mission of the company to the aspirations of the team members. And that's my job. That's where my high value job is. And that encompasses everything, right? Like effective delegation, so that I can free my cycles. I don't want to do certain things because I have other things to do. I don't want to be spending 8 hours writing code, or let's say even 4 hours in a day writing code and doing deep code reviews, when I can do so much more for my team. And what is that so much more? It's not like you're delegating just for the sake of it, right? If you're delegating it correctly, your team is growing. That's the sign of good delegation. And then after delegation, what are you using your team time for as a manager? I can do so much more coaching. I can do so much more training. I can be invested in, developing aspirations in my team, bringing their best selves to work, because it's like managing a group of painters, right? It's not like I can say, paint the face first, paint the body next, paint the background now. It's like making sure they have all the right tools, the right canvases, right brushes, right paints, everything, and getting out of their way to see how creative they can get. And if they're not creative enough, can I build in more creativity? Can I introduce them to some of the higher level concepts in life, right? Like critical thinking. And because if you do critical thinking, you will be a better engineer at work. If you're a product minded engineer, you'll write better code every day. If you're thinking about emotional intelligence, you will build a better team culture as a tech lead, and you're not just worried about bossing over others. So that's where I come in as a manager. So there is nothing like too much delegation. Delegate as much as possible, if not more, so that what are you delegating, right? You cannot delegate stuff like building trust, growing people, managing your discomfort. These things, by the way, you have to do it yourself. You have to sit with your team, build the trust. You have to sit with your team, grow them. You have to manage your own discomfort, your ego, your social capital. You're only delegating tasks that the team is good at. They are good at writing the code, let them do it. They're good at designing stuff, let them do it. So I've figured out that my job is to delegate the tasks that the team is good at doing. Whatever they're not good at doing, I will develop them, and that's what I need the time for, right? That's why there is nothing like too much delegation. The more time you create for yourself, use that time to do more coaching. And Andy Grove said that in his classic book, High Output Management, right? He said training is the highest leverage. Coaching or training or feedback is the highest leverage thing for a manager. So you never have enough time for it, by the way. So, everyone needs support, right? And the way you give support is through radically candid feedback, coaching, managing your social capital. If you want to grow in a company, you should know your peers. You should, know how to play that. People call it passive politics, but I say it's managing social capital. You should know when to spend your credits and when to not, bother using them, just so that you are putting yourself and your team in a strategic position. All this requires time, right? So if you are delegating more, very good. Use that time to do all this. So stop thinking about, there is no upper limit to delegation. The more you do, the more you can grow in your career, because these are higher level things. The moment you start doing more of the higher level things, you are on your journey up. So I think that's the way to think about it. At least for me, I'm a strong believer in this.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Malika. So I hear, without you, sometimes you say the word and sometimes you are kind of all fingers are pointing towards the concept of time and how to use time, essentially. Can you speak about time as far as time management, but even also with just the velocity of the expectation of delivery in the modern world? How do you not get run over by time? How do you not use time to run over people and effectively, take this holistic approach that you're speaking about? Because so many people do struggle with that, especially as managers, and you reflected earlier that there are a lot of managers that aren't really balancing their teams well. So can you just talk a little bit about time, just under the umbrella of this whole topic? How can we be mindful of it and also use it in a holistic way?
Yes. So I would start with saying that a leader has to be really ambitious. Like, for example, I have so many things that I want to do with my time, even at work or in general in life. But let's not get to life, right? Like, let's stay focused on professional life. Even in my professional space, I have so many things I want to do for my team, for my company, so many initiatives. If you're working for the right company, then there are areas in which you can bring your skills and expertise and help growth, right? So ambition is very important. What that will do is it will let you prioritize your time. And first of all, everyone knows that human life is finite, right? It's not like time is an infinite resource. That's the problem. So if you have so many things you want to do, and if there is only limited time, there comes the concept of prioritizing. So the moment you start elegantly dancing that it's really like an elegant dance that you do, knowing your priorities and the things that you want to do, right? It's a very fine balance. But once you find that out, the next step that will happen is you'll respect not only your time, it will become valuable to you. There is no time for slack now, right? Everything is about it's not becoming paranoid about efficiency, but you're more or less wanting to build a highly efficient life for yourself, and you start respecting other people's times as well, like your team's time, your direct reports time, your stakeholders time, products time, everyone's time. So this is the first principle, I think. Someone who's ambitious, who has prioritized correctly, and it's a consistent process. You do that every day, And then you respect your time and the others. After this comes the processes and strategies to put in place, right? So for me, what I do is my Google Calendar is always up to date. Not a single time is it out of sync. They all the time know, where is Malika? Do I need to even Slack her? Or does she have an out of office thing for these 15 minutes, right? They know exactly where I am and whether I can be reached. So that's one thing. And then I time box, like let's say I am doing a review of a code review and I need some quiet time. I time box like 2 hours where, there are certain high priority tasks that can interrupt me, but otherwise they can expect that I won't get back to them for the next 2 hours because my calendar says that. The time box is also reflected on the calendar. And then leading the way, right? Like be in time for the meetings and then reward that behavior. Instead of punishing bad behavior, I found that rewarding good behavior is so much better. So if someone is coming to the meetings at the right time and they're respecting each other's time, they're on the dot and they're respecting meeting deadlines, reward that behavior, because it's important for the team to understand that not only your manager's time, but all your team members' time is also very important. If you have scheduled a 30-minute meeting, keep the meeting to 30 minutes, get to the core principles, and then the rest can be documented either on Confluent or whatever is your platform, right? So that's very important. And I remove inefficiencies, right? Like they don't need to ping me on Slack for everything. There are visual dashboards, there is documentation that I share with the team. It's very transparent. Then I'm not like a point of authority where they need to ask me a question and I need to make every single decision for them. Information is out there. So I've created these efficient processes for myself where, first of all, I'm not pinged for every small thing. They can take the decisions. The information is out there. There are visual dashboards, Confluent pages, documentation out there. And the other thing is like, time is a very, very finite resource, and whoever can manage that is in a place of advantage. So because you're freeing yourself up for some of the things that can set you up for success, right? You're not losing time dealing with efficiencies and trivialities. So I try to do that, and I hold my team accountable. I hold myself accountable, and I hold my team accountable. If it's a 30-minute meeting, whether we have to come to a decision in 30 minutes. If we didn't, then it's a problem, right? Like why weren't we able to do that? Why didn't we estimate more time? So just building that culture from the beginning helps a lot, because it might not culminate in productivity immediately, but it builds a lot of respect. And mainly if you're managing for results, it means you are removing inefficiencies all the time. At least every release you are trying to do a retrospective and remove efficiencies. Time management is a big thing. So that's my idea on that. Priority, ambition, and then respect for everyone's time.
Thank you so much. So well said. And I know I went in deep with the concept of time, which is like so hard for anyone to speak about. So thank you so much for, of course, taking your holistic vision and putting it into that response.
Of course.
So we've got about 8 minutes left. I'll do a light pause here to see if someone wants to hop off of mute. I see you, Joe. You want to go ahead? Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. First, this is really rich. I'm so grateful. Thank you. You're rocking my world, which is a good thing. And you've touched.
Thank you, Joe.
You've touched a little bit on this here, but I wanted to see, and I don't want us to take us off topic, but I wondered if you could riff a little bit about your decision-making models. I heard the time priority, but it can also be a much bigger conversation, and we're really not taught how to make decisions. So,
yes, definitely. So, yeah, decision making. To answer that bang on, right? First of all, I approach it in two methods. One is because I am still working for a startup. I have had to make rapid decisions and sometimes it's the slow decision making processes, right? So I have done both, and I like both of them. First of all, I feel when it comes to decision making, the core principles for me are that almost on a daily basis, whoever are my stakeholders, I make sure that I am in sync with them. 24 hours is already too long for me to be out of sync with the data that I need for my decision making. So whatever it be, right, like daily stand-ups, whatever are your agile principles, however you get your data, have that ready as much as possible, to be in a spot to ask the right questions at least, and be ready, just one step away from making those decisions. Then I feel like having that flexibility and creating that buffer for myself with my upper management as well, where sometimes if I need to take rapid decisions, I will have to take it. I am aware of what are the goals of this team, what are my deliverables, and if we have, especially if we have things like proof of concepts going on, a demo for a customer, especially if you are working for a company where still there is no profit and you're still in a revenue stage and it's still a growth company, you are there is no other way. Sometimes it's about having to make those rapid decisions, right? So having that flexibility and creating that over time to say that I might do this and you need to be okay with it, and sometimes the outcome might be bad, but because we are in a creative space, there will be errors, but I'll make sure that the cost of that error is really, really low. So rapid decision making, and then slow decision making process. So first I'll tell you the slow decision making process, right? It's more traditional, where you collect data, you involve everyone, you co-op people, you have alternate approaches, you do a pilot, maybe you do a demo for your committee or whoever is your boss, and then finally everyone together picks the right alternative, and then we make a decision to go ahead with it. And that's correct, because the cost of not making the right decision is so high. You cannot afford to do that yourself, or just have one or two people in your team and quickly making that decision. The cost of failure is really big, and also the time for writing the solution, coming up with the solution, is long. So the cost of engineering and the cost of failure, both are big. In that case, for me, it's a no-brainer. It's a slow decision making process. Rapid decision more when the cost of failure is less. Sometimes it's just about a small tech debt or small refactoring, which can and the gain is very high, right? It might earn us a new POC, or the customer might be ready to do a second demo session with us, or maybe they want a small change in an API which can give them a lot of growth. It's very low cost for the engineering, and it's a low cost for the failure. Then that's a classic case for me to do rapid, because there's no time to collect all that data and run it by 3 layers of hierarchy, do demos, and then listen to people who are on the critical side, and then finally convince them. So there's no time for that. So that's my approach. And to be honest, even when I made rapid decisions, usually there's a tech lead in the room who's assisting me, right? We are taking that decision more or less in a very democratic way, because there's one person who knows more than me in the team. So collecting that information, checking off all the boxes and saying, okay, how bad can it get, and then still taking that call. And sometimes things have not worked out. It's turned out that it didn't give us that advantage. It's never black and white that there was zero advantage, but not all the way how much we had expected. But that's fine, because you have created that buffer for a possibility, that flexibility in your team, that the team can function itself, and it can take certain decisions by itself, and my manager is going to be okay with it, and it's going to the management is going to trust me. Because if you don't allow room for that, then innovation is really hard. You can do 3 things without rapid decisions. You can handle tech debt. You can even barely meet the customer expectations. Maybe even the customer can be happy, but innovation is really hard, which is like the 4th step, right, where the team is always delivering and it's on a very green state. That's a little hard. So I like to keep swapping between these states. That's my This itself is long, but it's like the brief version on decision making. That's a topic in itself too, but fantastic question, Joe.
Beautiful. Wow. So, I mean, like everything, we've got 1 minute left. So there's no way we can dive in deeper on some of these really chewy topics that are so important, especially right now. And I love that we are stretched across different industries, and everything that you're saying is still so relevant, because essentially you're speaking about serving yourself and others through leadership, which is it seems like a no-brainer, but it's historically speaking, it just hasn't been the dominant way of leadership. So again, Malika, I thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day again to speak with us and drop so much knowledge. Thank you to everyone for joining us. I'm going to pass the mic back to you, Malika. Let us know some food for thought to go home with. Well, we're home, but to go to sleep with later tonight. And then also, let us know how we can stay in touch with you, maybe on socials or email or anything like that you want us to consider.
Yes, first of all, thank you. This was so engaging, and I love it when it's engaging. It's truly why we do these chat and learn sessions. So thanks to PowerToFly, and thank you, Mariella, for being such a wonderful host. I just love the way you conduct this. You're just fantastic. And thanks everyone for being so participative. This was fantastic. I write on Medium, so I will share. I write a lot about leadership as well, but in general about my critical thinking processes. So I'll share my Medium handle with you guys, and then I can also share some articles, books, LinkedIn learning courses which have shaped me with respect to delegation, and maybe PowerToFly can make that available to the rest of the audience. And then in general, I would say, if you're in leadership, then that's because you are attracted to certain higher level concepts in life, right? Like you are a critical thinker, you're observing nature for answers. You want to make people be better at their work. It's a great opportunity for you to do that in your vocation, right? Leadership is what makes that happen, because you're dealing with people. So take delegation as just another opportunity to practice all those principles. You will be surprised how good you will get at it if you approach it from a learning perspective. So that's my closing thought, and hope to see you all sometime again soon.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Guys. Thank you.